Yeah, I think that was how we learned.
Mm.
We weren't scared to have a crack at something. As we were building the business, we then became very passionate about these regional areas. We were able to build, and once we got through that period, we just had this really dominant market position that sort of led to where we were today. I spent more hours there than anyone else. I want to work somewhere that's fun, that I enjoy, that everyone else will. People do like stories like ours.
Yeah.
You know, even really big businesses are very happy to go out of their way and support a story like ours.
You're listening to Beyond Growth with Rayan Fernando.
Luke,
Rayan.
welcome, mate. Thanks for coming in, and what an amazing studio we're in today as well. TNG studio here in Surf Coast in Torquay. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to do it here. We actually, the first co-working space we ever had used to be around the corner on Baines Crescent here. So we spent a lot of time down here in the early days of Gawk.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how busy it is on a cold winter afternoon in Torquay, actually. Trying to get a car park around here was crazy, but it's good to get together and find a little bit more about yourself, but also get a little bit more about, learn more about Gawk as well, which has been sort of a growing quite, well, steady is probably an understatement, but it's growing really well over the last few years. So keen to understand how we got here today, but give us a little bit of backstory about yourself, man. Love to find out a little bit more about you and what got you here today.
Yeah, sure. My brother and I, who were in the business together, both grew up in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, and yeah, had a great childhood with a lot of sport, footy in the winter and cricket in the summer, and I went to uni at RMIT once I graduated, and was lucky enough to go and work in the US for the third year of my degree. So it was a 3-year degree split over 4 years, and I was lucky enough to use that third year working over in the US before coming back to Australia and continuing to work for the same company I've worked for in the US, which was an amazing opportunity, sort of right place, right time. And it's amazing how all these things come together. So I'd studied marketing, and then when I'd had that job for a business in the US called Landmark Dividend, my boss over there is now a 20% shareholder in Gawk. So worked for them for a year there, then moved back to finish uni in Melbourne, and then to Sydney for 3.5 years in that job, and started Gawk while I was still living in Sydney with my brother James.
Look, it's always nice to hear a family business coming together, but that sort of transition from, working at LDC infrastructure and then going, okay, we're going to try something different. What got you going? What got you into Billboards? Because that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a traditional background. LDC was essentially an infrastructure investor that would buy the rental income streams underneath a whole bunch of assets, but Billboards was one of the assets we used to invest under. So when I was working for them, I had quite a bit to do with a lot of the billboard operators in Australia. It was probably only 15% of that LDC business was billboards, but I always found the billboard industry pretty entertaining. We used to do telco and renewable deals, which both those industries were pretty vanilla compared to the cowboys in the outdoor advertising industry. So I was drawn to a few personalities I met. I learned a lot about leasing in that role. My brother James was working in architecture and town planning on a lot of projects in regional Victoria. So in hindsight, that intersection of his town planning skills and my leasing and sales and finance skills sort of makes a lot of sense, but I don't think it's probably the obvious background. Like most people probably assume you started at oMedia or JC2Co or one of the big guys and then went out on your own, and that wasn't wasn't how it came together for us, but it's worked out really well.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's go back. You started kicking in. You wanted to start this, and you're going down the path, and you started with one billboard. Is that correct? Is that the way you kicked off? And how does that opportunity come up, and where do you take that?
Yeah, so I think I knew I was at the end of my time in that that past role that I'd really enjoyed, but I was ready for something different. And I took a week off, and so did James, and we drove around regional Victoria for a week with a really high level idea that we thought we could build some billboards and have that. It wasn't even a business plan. We thought we might be able to build sort of 3 or 4, have them as an investment, a passive investment that someone like O Media could sell on our behalf, and we'd. Neither of us owned a house. We thought maybe we could put some money into that, and that would sort of perform well for us as an investment. And yeah, we drove around. To be quite open, I was working on 2 other things at the same time. I knew I was probably done in my last role, and I wanted to do something else. And of the 3 things I was working on, the other 2 absolutely crushed and burned, and this has worked out well. But yeah, the very first, we'd driven around, we'd found all these sites, we'd negotiated some deals with landlords. The first site we got approved was in Portland, in southwest Victoria. So that went up in September 2018. I think our initial drive around when we were both still employed was October 2017. So it was almost a year later, the first one went into the ground. But January 2018 was when, our business got registered. I was working full time on it. So the first one went in the ground about 9 months later.
That's unreal. And I suppose, my background's in technology and IT and working in that space. And the thought of like kicking off something in this sort of realm is really foreign to me. So I find that really interesting. So you're finding locations, putting up a billboard with the liking or with the hope of selling it on, basically.
Yeah.
And then, is that just taking a punt? What was the goal at the time?
Yeah, I think it was taking a punt. I think we were lucky. We were in our mid-20s. Neither of us had a mortgage. Neither of us had kids. We were probably at a stage in our lives where we could take a bit of a bet. But yeah, I think it's important to remember, like, your concept of money obviously changes as you get older. I think that first billboard in Portland cost about 50 grand. Mm-hmm. Which is, not an insignificant amount of money to a 26-year-old and a 24-year-old. And it really was a punt. I think the hypothesis was you put it in the ground and then someone like I would go and sell the space. Yeah. They'd pay us X every year. We'd pay the landlord Y, and we'd have a bit left over.
Get the difference, yeah.
And it didn't turn out that way. I think it was empty for 4 months, and we went, oh, well, we're going to have to figure out how to sell advertising space. I think everything about that first site was probably a bit of a shit show to start with. It's turned out really well, but we didn't know you had to get a building permit after you put the billboard up. And then they said, oh, well, you need a retaining wall. So that cost us $5,000. And we had to, we put up this retaining wall. We went, we've just spent $5,000 we didn't budget for. And then the building inspector said, well, you've got to fill in behind the retaining wall. There's a big gap between this hill you've dug into. So we actually, we did a deal with a local bloke down there to bring his bring an excavator and give us a lot of dirty fill that he had that probably had a whole lot of crap through it. We gave him a case of beer, and we spent 3 or 4 hours on a 35-degree day shoveling fill behind this retaining wall. But yeah, I think that was how we learned. We weren't scared to have a crack at something. To tie it back to the earlier part of the story, it was empty for 3 or 4 months. We were paying rent, and we went, well, we've got to figure out a way to sell this space. In that 3 or 4 month period, we'd built 3 or 4 other sites, one in Bendigo, one in Geelong, on Port Arlington Road. And we got, by luck, not by design, there was a state election late that year. So we lucked our way into a few politicians advertising for the election and a few property developers and others. So it was probably more by luck. There was a lot of hard work trying to find some advertisers for that site in Portland, but I don't think we were super successful on that one in the early days.
No, and so these were digital, were they? Or?
They're all static.
They were all static at the time,
yeah. So I think we built about 25 or 30 static billboards to begin with, and then our first ever digital billboard was in Traralgon, and that went up in 2020 from memory. So that was the first time we'd ever built a digital, which once again seemed like a lot of money at the time when that went into the ground.
I bet. And look, I mean, for me, I think about how do you pick your locations? You know, I mean, this is especially early days, right? Because you're starting out, and you don't want to be going sort of everywhere all at once, but how do you go like, oh, that's a great spot, How do we, that's for me that I find that really interesting.
Yeah, it's a mixture of art and science. So there's a lot of really half the answer is quite boring around how the planning scheme works and where you can get billboards approved and where you can't. But I won't put anyone through the minutiae of that description. The other half is probably fairly intuitive. It's looking at those parts of a town that are busiest. Often that part of a town might have strategic value. So, for instance, in a big tourist town, most of our clients are going to want a billboard on the way into town. So every tourist that's going to the Bellarine Peninsula or wherever it might be sees that billboard. Whereas there's different strategic value to a billboard right in the middle of town where there's pedestrians and cars might stop for longer. But largely it's around how many people see that site or the value of a unique audience in something like a big farming area. An example I quite often like to give is we can have one billboard in Bendigo on High Street, which is one of the busiest roads in regional Victoria, and another one 100 kilometres away on the Calder Highway in a farming area like Bridgewater or Witchyproof, and the actual raw traffic that goes past that site in the farming area will only be 5% of what goes past the site in Bendigo. But we might write 70% of the revenue we do in Bendigo on that site in the farming area because really? That might be such a valuable audience to attract a brand or a seeds brand or a fertilizer brand. So we're very much in a supply and demand industry, and space is worth what someone will pay for it. So when it comes to finding sites, now we have such an intimate knowledge of what an advertiser wants, so that guides that process. When you're first getting started, you're doing a lot of guessing, and there's very much sites that we probably built in the first year that we might have done differently now, but the value of some of those lessons far outweighed the investment at the time.
No, I bet. And I think it's one of those things that, hindsight is amazing to look back and go. But one thing I've really noticed for you guys is that you do tend to focus a lot on regional. Was that a strategic move from a business point of view to sort of take over the regional side of things? Because ever since I've been preparing for this interview and things like that, I've been looking around. I just keep seeing Gawk, and I was just speaking to somebody the other day, and they were just saying they were driving around Victoria or from Victoria up to in a Victoria sort of a regional area, and they were just taking photos of Gawk billboards. It's totally coincidentally as well. I'm like, that's crazy. So I mean, has there been a strategic move to go regional, and what was the reason for that?
Yeah, it was strategic at the start in that when we first started the business, there was a huge discrepancy between the amount of billboards in regional Victoria at that time in comparison to regional New South Wales and regional Queensland. So that was our really basic hypothesis at the start, is that's not right. There seems to be an opportunity. So at the start, that was very much part of, albeit a very basic strategy. We're not talking a 40-page business plan. We're talking about a conversation driving around driving around with my brother and I. So that was a really, really high level strategy. And then I think as we were building the business, we then became very passionate about these regional areas. Like both of us, we grew up in Melbourne. I think we were really, really conscious at the start about being these sort of fraudulent city boys sort of parading as being regional. And we used to think about what you'd wear, and you'd bring a change of clothes, and you feel like you need to have boots on and a hat on the whole time. So I don't know whether that was right. But yeah, I think at the start we saw a bit of an opportunity, and then as we got into it, we just loved everything about doing business regionally. And our industry, Australia-wide, is quite a small industry, so we sort of know most of the players in metro areas. And I think we found, just doing business regionally just so much easier, more fun, more enjoyable. And I can give you some examples. I think when you're doing deals with property owners and you're calling someone and offering them some money for a long-term lease to put a billboard in their property, most of the landlords we're dealing with, you'll have a quick coffee, you'll shake their hand, and it'll be signed the next day. When you start sort of venturing into some of the metro sites, sometimes there's sort of 15 emails back and forth with lawyers on a heads of agreement. So I think it's easier to do business with the landlords. A lot of the councils have probably been easier to deal with. A lot of our advertising clients are probably typically easier to deal with. There's a lot more sort of business owner to business owner interactions. So a lot of even these big brands, a lot of them are franchised regionally. So you'll be dealing with a franchisee of a big brand in Horsham, where that same equivalent store in Melbourne's probably owned by head office. And I think the story I often go back to in why I'm so passionate, and so is James, about regional areas. I think when COVID hit, it made an enormous impact on our industry. Like we commercialize cars going past billboards, and if there aren't cars on the road, you haven't got much to commercialize. So we had about 15 or 20 sites when COVID hit, and we were freaking out. You're going, okay, well, all our revenue is going to disappear. We've still got all these rent payments to our landlords. And in those first sort of 2 or 3 weeks when COVID started becoming something real and everyone was pretty freaked out, we were going, oh, well, we're probably going to have to call our landlords and negotiate some kind of rent relief to help get us through this period of uncertainty. And of our 20 landlords, we would have had 7 or 8 of them that called us before we could even pick up the phone and say, hey, like, I love what you guys are trying to do. Don't worry about paying rent until we all figure this out. And even of the remainder, we probably called the other 10 or 12. And I think just about every single one was a 2-minute conversation. And yes, we want to support you. Don't worry about paying us for a few months until we all figure it out. And I only hear it secondhand, but that was not the experience of our industry with landlords in Melbourne or Sydney.
Yeah.
Like some of that was in court 2 years later. Where for us, like I was incredibly moved at the time when that was happening. Like we had one landlord in particular that I probably won't name for confidentiality reasons, but as a husband and wife that are retired, travel around their caravan quite a lot, and are sort of comfortable enough, but not sort of super wealthy. And when they're calling you and saying, hey, don't worry about paying us for 3 or 4 months, that's a holiday to them, or that's a loan repayment, or that's a grandkid's birthday present. So I was quite emotional when people were calling us with some of those messages, and I think that you feel like you've got to pay that back over time, not just to those 15 or 20 landlords, but I think we've carried that burden of, okay, people looked after us when we needed that 6 years ago. It's important that we pay that back. So we're very passionate about it. We're privileged now that we've got sites, certainly all over regional Victoria and now New South Wales and South Australia as well. But we've just loved the ease of doing business and the kind of people you meet and deal with day to day regionally versus metro.
That's an awesome story. I mean, we everyone struggles so much through that period, and then to have that helping, the real help first sort of mentality, which is really cool to hear, and just to be able for people to call you that's really special. I can see how that can sort of have massive impact, and from the regional point of view as well. I mean, and it's not necessarily regional, but from a COVID point of view, you then doubled down, right? Like you decided, okay, we're gonna go a bit harder than heading into this period.
Yeah, absolutely. So we like when COVID first hit, we had 20 something sites. From a market share point of view, we might have been sort of 15 to 20% market share in regional Victoria. And I think we made a decision. We were probably lucky. We had supportive landlords. We didn't have shareholders to report to. We also, like, quite fortunately, didn't have a whole lot of staff to worry about. It was just James and I. So we sort of made the strategic decision that, like, we will come out of this. Let's come out of it with the best development pipeline of anyone, certainly in our industry. And there was basically a 2-year period where we just went absolutely ham trying to find new sites, getting council applications in, and the rest of the industry had absolutely stopped. Like no one had done a single thing. So we sort of had this 2-year period where we went in with 15, 20% market share. We probably came out with 30 or 35, but a pipeline that then over the next sort of 2 to 3 years after COVID, we were able to build. And once we got through that period, we just had this really dominant market position that has sort of led to where we were today. But I think it was an absolutely critical period in our history.
That's unreal. I mean, I must admit that sort of explains the way. I mean, so I've been part of the Geelong Business Network for a few years, but Gawk just sort of popped in, And then you're like, oh, all of a sudden you guys are everywhere. But I feel like that's where the legwork happened, right? Like, so you had the 2 years, 2023, and all of a sudden in the last couple of years, especially in Geelong. So you've chosen Geelong as more for like I guess a stronger regional hub for yourself. But I mean, yeah, that explains everything. The fact that all that extra effort kind of really paid off.
Yeah, I think it's there's always different periods that are important, but that set us up for the next period, and then the team was able to grow, and we were able to put in place some culture and processes and things like that have got us to where we are today. But I think if you compare the start of 2020 to probably end of 2023 or 2024, when we'd been able to execute on that development pipeline, that's when the whole market changed and really set us up to where we are today.
No, it's all right. Why Geelong? Why did Geelong sort of become the like the major, I guess the first building area?
Yeah, it's a good question that's going to have a far less scientific answer than you'd expect. So when James and I started the business, we then the next two hires we made outside of the two of us, one was based in Geelong, one was based in Melbourne, and then we decided we needed a sales team, and we sort of went, oh well, we've got to build the preeminent media sales team in regional Victoria. So we hired two people. One, and they're both still with us today. One was based in Geelong that my brother met bartending at Black Sheep. Who you know,
Will, yes,
you know, and Will served my brother and his mates. My brother was pissed and went, "Oh, you're pretty funny. Maybe you could sell billboards," and gave him a card. And Will, to his credit, called the next day. And then our second esteemed hire was Phil, who was someone that went to school with me in the year above and had called me and said, "Oh, I bought a house in Torquay. I haven't really got a job. Like, have you got any? I know you guys have a regional business. Is there anyone you could introduce us to?" And James and I went, "Oh, Phil's a pretty good bloke. Like, people would trust and respect him. Maybe he could sell billboards." And we hired Phil as well. And yeah, just by virtue of the two of them being down here, we got the co-working space, which was around the corner from here on Baines Crescent in Torquay. And then it just so happened we sort of had the core of that early team down here. And I think we've always just found we can, like for like, we can hire better people in Geelong than Melbourne in a lot of roles, not all roles, but I think we just find you get more loyal people. It's easier to scale our culture down here and be a real part of the community. So I think it's that team in Geelong now is, I should know the exact number, 16 or 17, and we've really just made this our biggest office and an absolute hub. And I think we've got that back in spades. Like, I think we've supported certainly the Chamber of Commerce, but a lot of other groups down here, and we've always found it to be a place that if you're seen to be putting in, people will help you, and that's certainly been our experience. But we're both big Geelong supporters, so that might have played another part to the decision down here as well.
Building a team is, I mean, obviously hard, right? Like, it's not hard, but it's a challenge. And I suppose from your point of view, there's the two of you to start with. You know, you hustled over COVID, growing. And then that decision to let go as leaders and sort of, you know, elevate other people around you. And like, for example, Phil going, "Oh, he's a nice guy. Let's get him on board." Like, I mean, and he's still around. So obviously some good hiring decisions early on, but that's still tough, isn't it? Like, to actually let go and start to spread their wings, so to speak, or let other people take over.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, I think we progress more and more with that every year. And we're lucky now. We've got a big team of, I think we're 47 and some really good leaders within that team. So it becomes a lot easier to let go of different parts when you've got really capable people who can do some things better than you ever could. But it's been a challenge really throughout the history of the business. Everyone that works with me knows that personally I'm pretty particular in how I like things. I do things at a pace that can be probably relentless and expect others to try and keep up. So I think it took us a long time, and probably me more than my brother James, to build that confidence in other people, that they can take over things that I've done in the past. And I think when you do that well, it's probably the most rewarding part of the business. But it certainly has always been a challenge and continues to be. But I think like some of the most rewarding parts of our business is when you meet, we'll have a client event, a big piss up somewhere, and a client that you've never met pulls you aside over a beer and says, hey, I got sold a billboard campaign by Phil. I had my artwork done by Phoebe. I had Lisa print it and install it. And I met Ruby in accounts who's chased me for payments. And when they describe that experience with Gawk and all the things they loved and what Gawk represents to them, it's the same feedback that James and I used to get when it was as us doing all of that. Yeah. So when that's been able to translate across others and people are having that really authentic and unique sort of Gawk experience and they've never even met James or I or even heard of us, I think that's been really rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a perfect testament to like building a good team and a good culture. And speaking of culture, you guys have a very unique culture. I think I've seen a few Speedo videos and photos back in the day, but you've made it a point to be different, right? And not sort of be the usual media company or media production company that it is. So how have you worked building that out? Because I feel like that's something that comes from the owners and the founders of the business but carries through. There's a lot of fun. I see Gawk as a fun business.
Yeah, I think it stemmed from frustration. Like when James and I started, you look at the stuff that frustrated you in jobs you had before, and both of us had great opportunities in some of those jobs, but culturally, like when I was working for LDC, a really good example was I wrote this job ad that was pretty ridiculous. We were trying to hire an admin person in our office in Sydney, and they were pretty hard jobs to get people to apply for. And I wrote this ridiculous job ad, and it got like 50 or 60 applications the first 2 days. And I got an email from the head of HR and then the CEO saying, take this fucking thing down. It's embarrassing. Like, it's our investors might see this, and it was a bit colourful, but they were pretty sort of vanilla in how they wanted to approach things, and I sort of didn't respond to emails for a couple of days, and eventually took it down. But I had a really good person from it, and I think it was the same with a lot of the cultural stuff in some of those jobs. And there's stuff that used to frustrate you, and when you get your own business and it's a complete blank canvas and you can do whatever you want. Your default position, why can't we do this? Like no one else would do that. And I think that's a big part of our values and the culture where we're always talking about at work is as certainly in the media industry, businesses are becoming bigger and bigger. They're under more cost pressure. The tongue-in-cheek example I like to give is they probably need sort of 7 focus groups to decide which shade of green they're going to use in their new in their Christmas card or whatever it might be. I think we get to do things quickly. We get to selfishly like create a workplace that I spend more hours there than anyone else. I want to work somewhere that's fun, that I enjoy, that everyone else will.
Just give me 30 seconds. If your business is serious about certification and trust, you need to check out ISO 365. They make ISO compliance simple, practical, and sustainable by building your ISO systems inside the Microsoft 365 tools you already use. No extra software, no hidden license fees, just real control and ownership of your compliance. I love the work that ISO 365 does because they don't just hand you templates and walk away. They become part of your team as virtual compliance officers, guiding you from gap assessment through to certification and long-term compliance. If you want compliance that actually works for your business and helps you win trust and new contracts, check out ISO 365. And now back to the show.
And yeah, that's like when someone walks in the door and we're onboarding them, like our biggest goal is the best place that they've ever worked. Like that's when someone finishes their working life, our internal goal is someone reflects, and whether they're at Gawk for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's our internal goals. They reflect on it, and that was the best job they had.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's also testament for the longevity of people staying with you as well, right? Like if it's a fun place to work, and that culture is sort of true and comes from the founders, it's an amazing place to see.
Yeah, and we get to have a lot of fun with it. Like there's so many examples, but an another one that just came to mind is like we were talking as a leadership team about, the business is getting bigger. How do we get more of those sort of one-on-one relationships? Because when it was 10, it's easy. Everyone knows each other. We've been going to the races and getting pissed and all this kind of stuff. Where when you're sort of 20, 25, suddenly not all of those 25 people have a really sort of close one-on-one relationship. So one of the things we did is we said, well, when we get the whole team together once a month, let's we'll put everyone's names in a hat and you draw someone's name out and you have lunch with them. And we said, well, why does it need to be names in a hat? Like, can't it be keys in the bowl? And now we still, to this day, we've done it for 2 years, probably once every month or once every 2 months, everyone's keys go in the bowl and you draw out a set of keys and it is just lunch. I will I will qualify that, but it's those kind of ideas that it's a really minor example. You talk about that at a big organization, you'll have 5 people chasing you out the door, where people come to us with those kind of ideas, and I think the default position is great. Let's do it. If someone else wouldn't do it, we should be doing it.
And I think it kind of goes back to the real Australian, like just where we are, like the larrikinisms, the wanting to poke the bear, that kind of stuff. Like that's kind of what we are as a culture. So I think you're just embodying that, which is awesome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's awesome. Now look, in saying that, what's the trend? I mean, from growing that as well and seeing where the industry is going, because the industry's changed quite a bit, right? So I think people's attentions, how we take in media. I mean, I had my father-in-law the other day, and he's like, "Oh, watch this show on Channel 31, like as like a show. Like, do you watch it?" I'm like, we don't even have an antenna. Like, the way we get media and the way we listen to things and watch things has completely changed. So how's that impacted, I guess, the billboard space? Because there's digital and there's static, but I mean, digital's a whole nother kettle of fish, but then there's some big tech that you guys have invested in as well recently.
Yeah, we have been really fortunate in the time that we've been in the industry. Like, aside from COVID, you couldn't have really picked a better time in the last 150 years to get into the billboard industry, as digital billboards were driving sort of increased revenue for the industry. Consumption habits from consumers have changed. So really the simplest sort of overview is since we got in over the last 8 or 9 years, to be blunt, there's less people listening to radio, there's less people watching TV. That's not to dismiss those industries, like they're great industries. There's some really good companies within those industries, but our industry has grown a lot. It's more than doubled the revenue in out of home, which is the category we're in. Billboards are the largest part of that category, but the industry has more than doubled in the 8 years we've been part of it. In the last 3 years alone, the revenue of the industry is up by more than 25%. In that same 3-year period, advertiser spend on TV has gone down by more than 25% and radio by more than 15%, which is not to say, as I said, that there's still great industries. There's some really well-run companies within those industries, and certainly regionally in both radio and TV in particular, the companies that are still investing in those spaces are great businesses serving clients really well. I think Geelong's a great example where K-Rock and Bay is a really well-run radio station. It contributes to the community a lot and it's still growing, where there's probably other regional radio stations that are part of bigger corporates where costs are being cut, revenue does start to decline, which is a mixture of media consumption habits. But yeah, also when you're cutting costs and cutting teams, your revenue decline probably happens faster.
Absolutely. And I think especially in Geelong too, there's value in both medias, right? So to have that billboard, but be on the radio at the same time. So you kind of, you help each other out in that space. I think when people are looking for how they're going to market, how they're going to promote their brands, you don't have one option anymore.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
And especially in Geelong. I mean, I've been in Geelong for 26 years now, and I remember when I first came in, there was like no billboards.
Yeah.
And now there's billboards everywhere.
Yeah.
Like there's one at the Weber shop there, which I think is one of yours as well. A few in the middle of town. So I think for people to actually get the message out there, it's important. But it is accompanying. It accomplishes something which gets the attention of people that aren't getting traditional media sources.
Yeah, and that's what's happening is as time goes on, particularly those younger generations, every year there's a year more of a generation that has probably not watched linear TV, is probably not listening to the radio, and they're still seeing our product. So that's the sort of transition that's happening across the industry, but it happens over a long period of time. And I think we're realistic enough that at some point in my career that will happen to us in some way or another. So we've been fortunate the timing, and it's also on us to capitalize on as that transition continues to happen. We've seen in Victoria where we are so dominant, we've seen that transition happen in regional Victoria, and now we probably want to see that transition happen in other states as well.
Yeah, it's unreal. And I mean, just the digital billboard side of things and some of the technology that was announced recently from your team in regards to being able to change billboards based on weather. That's pretty cool. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'll give Gemma and our operations team a shout out because we gave her a pretty broad brief and said, go figure this out. And I think she was about 12 months into her Gawk journey, and and did an amazing job of just putting the whole offering together. But at a high level, the big guys in our industry have been able to do this for quite a period of time, probably about 5 years, where they've been able to sell campaigns that the creative that goes up on that digital billboard is triggered by the weather conditions where that billboard is. So the easiest example that resonates with people is McDonald's can buy a campaign that says when the temperature's above 30, show an ad for an iced coffee. When the temperature's below 10, show a Big Mac, and the rest of the time show another ad. And that technology's been around for about 5 years, but it's been really expensive. So an advertiser normally has had a minimum spend that's sort of well into the tens of thousands to even access it, and then they've got to pay a development fee, which once again is a really significant investment. And we sort of briefed our team and said, this is amazing technology, but we need to be able to put this together in a way that a business with one location in Horsham could afford it, because it's great technology. That's what digital billboards are built for, but we need to do it. If we can't do it in a way it's affordable for all of our clients, then we don't really want to be part of it. And we were able to, to put that together. And the product we've got probably has 90% of the capability of what's been sold by the big players in our industry, but it's at 5 to 10% of the cost. We only launched that in March this year. It's still a really small portion of the campaigns on our digital billboards, but my personal view, which could be wrong, is within 3 or 4 years, I think sort of 30 to 40% of the campaigns in our digital billboards will have those sort of weather triggers, because it's pretty amazing to have a billboard in Geelong that knows, is it currently raining in Geelong? What's the temperature? What's the UV? And customizes that message based on those conditions. So it's still in its infancy, but we're really excited about it.
I know. I find that super exciting. I know a bit of a nerding out of that one, but that's pretty cool, right? So, and I think there's so many businesses that can benefit from that as well. That's the key piece as well. And especially in Geelong, where it can be sunny in the middle of the day and then raining a couple of hours later. We get the classic Melbourne weather down here as well, right? So I think specifically in Victoria. And I mean, so you're now stretching down into SA and New South Wales as well. That growth and that sort of spread across Australia, what's the plan for you guys for the next few years?
Yeah, I think to start with, I can't tell you how fun it's been, because you've almost started again, but you actually have some kind of clue what you're doing.
Yeah. No more retaining walls with
no more retaining walls. So it's as much fun as I think we've had in the business. We got into South Australia probably 3 or 4 years ago. We've probably had our challenges with some of the councils over there. So our approval rate hasn't been where we've wanted, but New South Wales over the last 2 years has been by far our biggest growth area. We've been lucky. We've got a joint venture partner that we do some of our New South Wales stuff with, who was a really accomplished business up there, so called Sports and Outdoor. Ray Balcom was the founder of that and sold his business to O Media about 15 years ago, just over 15 years ago, and we've been able to do a whole lot of digital billboards up there in joint venture with their business, with his two sons involved now as well. So that's been able to pour petrol on the growth up there. And we've built a lot over the last 2 years. We've got really big ambitions over the next 2 or 3 years in regional New South Wales. We've definitely got ambitions past that. I probably won't share the full 10-year business plan publicly, but I think at a high level, we've seen what we can do in regional Victoria, how much fun we can have doing it. And sort of going, well, if you can do that here, why can't you do that everywhere else? And we've now proven that we're on a journey in the same realm in New South Wales. So I don't think we'll stop there.
No, it's unreal. And I've got to ask, how many billboards have you got now? Because I was looking at the website the other day, and I think I was scrolling for quite a period of time, just looking at all the different billboards. But you got a significant amount now, don't you?
Yeah, we're about 500 faces now, so about 85 digitals, and the rest are static. So yeah, it's a number I probably struggled to keep up with now, and it definitely has become more complex. Every part of the business, answering that question as we've got bigger. But I think we're coming up 10 years in about 18 months' time. So we're sort of starting to plan that party a little bit. We did an enormous party for our 100th billboard that went into the ground.
Yeah.
But we were still a team of about 10. And we spent 120 grand on this huge party after we put up our 100th billboard. That if you look at that as a percentage of your revenue, I don't think there's too many businesses in Australia that spent such a big percentage of their revenue on a party. But we did this. We got all these glamping tents at Lardner Park in Gippsland.
Oh, nice.
We got
That's
sort
a
of three.
spot.
It was amazing. Like we had sort of 3 different bands. It sort of went till sort of 4 or 5 a.m. There was a few people that weren't that happy with how loud it was trying to get to sleep. But it was just this amazing night. Like the analogy I normally give is it's almost like having a corporate wedding. So for James and I, everyone wants to sort of tell you about their favorite memory and how great it is. So it was a blur, but it was one of the best nights of my life. So we're sort of in planning mode for. We got a bit of pressure.
You've set the benchmark real high
to one up that. We thought we might do a 500th billboard party, but we thought we'd wait for 10 years, and we need to put some money away in a piggy bank to be able to live up to that.
No, that's amazing. I think that growth is like astronomical. And was it you doubled every year for the last few years, haven't you?
Yeah, largely we've grown by sort of whichever metric you use, sort of more than sort of 70% every year in the history of the business. And that was sort of more than double for a long time. The percentages do get a bit harder to hit as you keep on getting bigger. But I think we're still fairly early in the journey in the scheme of things. So I can't see that growth slowing down at all. Yeah, over sort of next 3 to 5 years.
And I mean, so I was just reading in the news the other day that things have shifted a bit for you guys recently from you're selling your own billboards now to the partnership with O Media was, I think, wrapped up in the last few months or 6 months ago, roughly.
Yeah, it was about 6 months ago. So we had, in the history of the business, they'd resold some of our stuff. So most of the time it was about sort of 15 to 20% of our revenue came through O Media, and we'd do about 80% ourselves. So the reason we used to do that was when you're 2 young guys without a clue in regional Victoria, Bunnings and Coles don't really want to split off some budget for 2 young guys that are still figuring it out. So they used to sort of package our stuff up with their sites, and they were a really big part of our growth journey. Like we wouldn't be where we are today without their support for the first sort of 7.5 years. Throughout that period, their business changed quite a lot. There's probably sort of 2 factors in the end of that relationship. One was we'd sort of grown to a point where we were very dominant in regional Victoria, so there probably wasn't that same need to rely on them to resell our stuff, and their business had changed a lot. Like the original founder and his brother that had been there 30 years who set up the relationship with us, they'd left. A lot of other sort of really senior people there that we knew really well had left, so we probably looked at the relationship a bit more unemotionally and decided we'd be better controlling our own destiny. So we made that decision about a year ago. And we've still got some really good mates there. There's some really good people within that business. When we did tell them we were leaving, I'd say it'd be fair to say that process didn't play out exactly how we expected. It was really important to us to leave the right way because they'd been really good to us. So we gave a lot more notice than we were contractually obliged to. There was sort of quite a big plan put in place in how that transition would go. And probably about halfway through that plan, it changed pretty suddenly and it wasn't our decision. So I'll probably probably leave it at that. So I think there were some decisions made at senior management that they'd sort of renege on what was agreed. And as I say, that I don't want to sort of talk too ill on them as a business because there are some great people there. There's probably some people there that went out of their way to try and make our life difficult. But I think it's played out well. We've now had about 9 months out in our own 2 feet, built our own agency sales team, which is now 7 or 8 people, which was only 12 months ago. So we've really built out that capability and we've had a lot of support from really big advertisers as well. And I think it's been eye-opening to us in people do like stories like ours.
Yeah.
You know, even really big businesses are very happy to go out of their way and support a story like ours, even when that played out in a way where I would probably perceive to be sort of trying to bully us on the way out. I think people don't like the sort of smaller players looking like they're getting bullied by someone that's bigger. So I think
we love an underdog, don't we?
Yeah, they do. So I think that's actually probably helped us. There was definitely some moments that we probably had our nose out of joint a little bit, but I think we got to have a lot of fun in the trade press in our industry, and I think it comes back to our culture. And at the end of the day, we're a team of 50 people. If we put out a press release, sorry for the language, but we can say whatever the fuck we want. Yeah. When I was trying to respond, it was going through a comms department, a legal department, and was probably pretty vanilla. So we got to have a bit of fun on the way out and continue to do so.
No, that's awesome. And that's the bit I enjoy about Gawk, mate. It's just the way you guys do have a bit of fun. You don't take yourselves too seriously. I mean, it's a great name too, right? On you for Gawkin. I love it. And I mean, 50 staff now. What's a average day, week like for you now? What are you up to?
For me personally, there's probably no average week. A week that I really enjoy. I'm probably a salesperson at heart, so a week where I still get to do some sales meetings, to talk to some landlords and negotiate some deals. There's probably no textbook or business coach in the world that would tell you to spend as much time on that. But I think for me, the weeks that I finish on a Friday and go, God, that was a good week, was I've had some time to sell. I've had some time developing some billboards. I've had some time with a team. I really love being able to come up with some dumb idea, send it to someone like Cassie, our marketing manager, and what used to be sort of 4 hours to execute some dumb idea is now 5 minutes of ideating it, and I still get to see it through to the end. So it's a lot more delegating. It's a lot trying to find enough time to lead, find enough time to sell, develop, do all this other stuff. But I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't really love every minute of it. And
I mean, what was the hardest thing? Well, what do you reckon was the hardest thing to do in the last few years when it came to growing the team?
That's a very good question. There hasn't been any one single thing that's really kept me up at night. I think the thing we're always most conscious of is how do you continue to scale the culture? Because the minute that you add 10 head count and it's worse, the culture's worse than it was, you sort of go, well, why are we growing? And I think people, including us, often do struggle with change. So when you're 10 and everyone knows you're going to 20, everyone goes, oh, well, it can't ever be as good as it was when it was just the 10 of us.
Yeah.
I think whenever we've grown headcount and inventory, in hindsight, I think everyone's always gone, okay, now is better than it was a year ago, and we've done I think we've done a really good job of that historically, but ensuring you continue doing that as we grow chews up a lot of headspace, a lot of planning. How do you, when now we have 2 offices in New South Wales that people that they're not daily engaged face to face with 45 other people in the business. How do you keep them as part of this unique culture? But I think so far we've always found a way that our culture in Erina on the Central Coast in New South Wales has all the core Gawk sort of value and culture, and then builds our own subculture, which is also great. So I think that's always a continual challenge that we've done well so far, but is really top of mind going forward. So that definitely requires a lot of planning and thought and conversation.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'd love to dig into it, because I work with a lot of business owners and things like that, and working on their culture and creating that culture and developing it and getting it to where you want to, and not letting it get not contaminated, but diluted, which is, as you grow, you're bringing in other people into your business that bring their own levels of core values and things like that. But what are you doing, I guess, to maintain it? Because it is a very unique culture you have, and you don't want to let that go. And if you are, obviously you want to show your 10-year plan, but there's a growth plan in there. But can you give us some ideas of what do you do to make sure that we maintain it?
I think you try and think about it a lot. It becomes harder to control as you get bigger, and that's good and bad. Like if we have someone new come in now, that culture is not what James or I say to them, in an hour in an onboarding session. It's what they walk into and they see others doing, and they see what those expectations are of them. And I think we've had that done really well, where someone started maybe being a little bit outside of where we wanted, and it's actually not. It's not me pulling them aside. It's a lot of the time not their manager pulling them aside. It's someone else that might stop them at the coffee machine and go, "Hey, I saw this. That's probably not Gawk."
That's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, and nothing's perfect. Like, it's easy to sit in here and talk about it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of ways we can impact that. I think investment's a really big part of it. Like we have a budget that is purely run by Ash Carey, who runs that part of our business, that she gets a number every year with a brief of make this as good a place to work as possible and make the culture as strong as possible. And that's not just, great, let's go play laser tag. It's everything we can invest into growing people. We take the whole team twice a year regionally. So we went to Warrnambool for 2 to 3 days, the start in March, with a whole team private hot spring, which probably wouldn't be in a HR textbook either. But we're about to go to Bendigo in September. So I think we put our money where our mouth is, and those trips are not inexpensive to get 50 people from 2 states to one place. So I think investment's part of it. But that's a big part of it. Yeah, I don't think many people would say, here's a line item, this is the budget to work on our culture, to build our culture, to grow our culture. That's unique just in itself. Yeah. Because people, I think, just expect it to happen or want it to happen, but won't invest in it. The fact that you're investing in it that's pretty special in itself. Yeah, it is. I think investment's part of it. I think it's modeled by so many people in our business. So when someone walks in and someone's probably making a joke that might be a little bit risque and might not go down a really big business, and oh, well, is that okay here? And I think they see, we find a really good balance. It's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. All of us, once a year do something. Oh, okay, you do get away with a lot here, but maybe that was too far. Yep. But it's just, I think it's making sure that someone's walking in and starting, and they see exactly what's expected here, and that's some of that's standard, and some of it's, hey, you can have a bit of fun, you can be yourself, you can take the piss out of yourself, you can take the piss out of each other. So yeah, I think all of that's really important.
That's awesome. And would that be the one thing that you wouldn't ignore or won't compromise on as you scale, like that piece of culture?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair statement. As I say, like selfishly, take all the altruism out of it, and selfishly, if I'm coming to work and I feel like I'm having less fun than I did last year, like why are we still growing? So for us, it's right at the top of the list as you continue growing. But as I say, I find that really rewarding to go to Sydney and see what's our subculture in Sydney, and same in Erina. And as you're opening more offices in more states, I think you can actually evolve that culture even better by growing. But yeah, it's got to be considered. And as I say, I think it's probably top of our list as you're growing, making sure you're not losing that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love that too. And I must admit, it's a good little case study in culture building and growing it. Now, as a business who wants to promote and wants to and I guess promote their business or their services and things like that, what things do you need to consider going into? I'm being a bit more practical in this one because I'm just thinking as a business owner. Because I spoke to Will and I said what I did, and Will's like, "Nah, Billboard's not for you." Purely because of what I do as an EOS implementer and things like that. But I guess what should businesses expect and look for when they are going down that path? They're going, okay, we want to promote our business. We've got budget to do X, Y, Z. How do we split it out? What's some of the considerations they should take?
Yeah, it's a lot of consultation. So I think we're always encouraging someone to we're the experts in this space. Like that's probably a great case study, and we'll ask you what you wanted and said, hey, this isn't for you. Yeah. That's exactly what we want ourselves to. Not doing to all of their potential clients, but
that was a couple of beers at a chamber after 5. He's like, mate, nah, not for you.
But I think the metaphor I'd use is if someone wanted plastic surgery, you don't rock up on surgery day and say, hey, go do it.
Yeah.
Normally we want to spend the time to sit down with someone, understand what their needs are. We work with clients across just about every industry in Australia. There's also some businesses that it's not for. But I think largely for us, like anyone that needs to grow awareness of their business, grow awareness of a product they sell, get a new campaign out there, differentiate from their competitors. Like when people have those needs, which most of us do, there's definitely validity in having a conversation with us. And we try and take that real consultative approach. Sometimes that's a formal meeting. Sometimes a beer with Will, like you said, might be a sauna. But yeah, it's so customized for every single business. If we have 150 clients in Geelong, there'll be 100 different approaches. And I think that's how we've evolved. When it was just James and I, we look back on some of these shitty emails we sent out, and we had one billboard in Portland, and you're sending these desperate emails to every business in Portland. Here's how much it is. Do you want it? Yeah. And it didn't work. Like we went 0 from 200 approaches to businesses in Portland because we were just sending them a price and asking them if they wanted to do it. So it's very much an industry that needs, we need to take the time to understand what someone wants and try and customize a campaign for them.
Absolutely. And you've got to be prepared for it too, don't you? Like, so if you're going to promote it, your websites need to be ready for it. Because at the end of the day, that's how we measure traffic too, isn't it? Like how much hits you get on your website, for example, based on Billboard, things like that. That's one of the ways. What are the other ways people actually, I guess, see an ROI on these things?
Yeah, every campaign can have very different goals. That's definitely one way that some clients measure it. I think the clients that are successful understand what they're trying to achieve, but yeah, sometimes that might be web hits, sometimes it might be awareness of their business that's new, it might be awareness of a new product they have. I think the industry is getting better in potential ways to measure effectiveness for clients. But once again, it's so varied across different campaigns and different clients.
Oh, awesome, mate. Luke, I really enjoyed our little conversation, mate. It's been great to get insight into Gawk and where you guys are heading as well. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the next few years. I'm really excited to see what's going on too, because I think there's going to be a lot on the horizon for you guys.
Thanks, Rayan. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, mate.